Today on Lead with Bubba Scott, I'm joined by Gilly Lane, head coach of the University of Pennsylvania's men's squash program and one of the most accomplished figures in Penn squash history. Gilly went from standout player at Penn to one of the top American professionals, even representing the U.S. internationally, to the coach who helped turn Penn into a national powerhouse. Under his leadership, the Quakers won their first ever Potter Cup National Championship in 2024, and then followed it up with a second straight title and a perfect 20-0 season in 2025. Today, we'll talk about his path into the sport, what elite performance requires, and how you build team culture in a sport that ultimately comes down to high-intensity one-on-one matches. Let's get it. Coach Gilly Lane, head coach of the University of Pennsylvania men's varsity squash team. Welcome to the show.
Bubba, thanks for having me. I'm glad we're glad we got a time and figured out a time to do this. You know, that's my fault on the first go around, but really happy to be here.
No, yeah, you're a busy man. You've got a lot going on, and you've been busy the past couple months with your incredible squash program. So we're so grateful to have you on the show, and we'll be talking about a lot of great leadership tasks, both as an individual player and then ultimately as a coach at what many say is the best squash program in the country.
I appreciate it. I don't know if you can say it this year with our finish, but I will take it. And hopefully we go one step further or two steps further next year. So that'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, I think everybody would agree that 2 out of 3 national championships in a 3-year period is pretty good. So
yeah, good run. Good run. I'll take it.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's get into it. If you wouldn't mind just explaining, like, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And ultimately, how did you fall in love with the sport of squash?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Springfield, Montgomery County, which is actually where I live now. So I didn't stray too far for school. I grew up in a household with 2 parents that one was in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. My mom was the U.S. national team captain. My dad played lacrosse at F&M. And I just grew up playing sports. It was the only thing that I wanted to do. My parents, they invested a lot of personal time in me. And they were the reason that I ended up getting into sports at such a young age. There's videos of me hitting a tennis ball over the net at like 2.5. Apparently, I haven't seen them, but my mom says that they're there. So I was blessed with the hand-eye pretty early in my life, but all I ever wanted to do was play with the ball, and just grew up with a supporting, loving family. My parents are my heroes. They set a great tone for myself, my sister, and my brother in terms of an environment which was super positive, but was also super demanding in terms of the expectations of working hard, following through on commitments, and being a good person. And the values that they taught us growing up are the values that actually I want to instill in my players today. So when people ask, where do you come up with this, your values or how you drive the boys or what you instill in them, I'm really actually reteaching what my parents taught me. So which has been phenomenal because it becomes a little bit second nature, and in that I lived those experiences and was very thankful to have supportive but tough in a way in terms of how we were raised. And so I actually didn't start playing squash until I was 10 years old. We were members of a club that had squash, and I was my favorite sport growing up was soccer. Now everyone knows that, but so I played soccer pretty much 9 months of the year, and then baseball in the spring was just one of my passions as well. And so squash kind of got fit in the winter months, and all of a sudden took to it. And my dad and I started traveling around. We started playing tournaments, and you'd play about 4 or 5 tournaments a year against players all over the country, and became pretty successful at it at an early age. But totally different era now that kids are playing all 12 months a year. I didn't focus on squash until my freshman year of college. So I was really playing 4 or 5, maybe 6 months a year. And it's just something I did in the winter. I had played tennis before that. So I was playing middle states and like regional events, and actually quit because of the cheating that was happening. I think getting hooked with line calls. And because there was money in tennis, I felt like the intensity of the sport led to, parents and coaches saying you got to win at all costs. And I think, and that was at 10 years old. And I said, I've had enough. And so I transitioned over to squash and just kind of became my winter sport. And then when I came to the time where it was to choose schools, squash was probably the easiest route because of the number of players that played.
Yeah.
So, if I was playing against the same 32 players, completely different than the entire nation of people playing soccer. And, I wasn't on the let's put it this way, I wasn't on the juicing plan for baseball. So I don't think a 5'7" power hitting second baseman was what I really was. I was more of a 5'7" defensive player with a weak arm. So I don't think I was going anywhere with that. And so I felt really lucky. I got into Penn in 2003, and I've never stopped loving the school since then. It's been the place that I've called home since that fall. I bleed red and blue, and it was the place that took a chance on someone who probably was on the low end of the academic spectrum in terms of what they would admit. But they didn't ask me to be anybody else but myself. Right. So it was, you come in, show what you're capable of. You've had success playing squash. We want you to be the person that you are and not change. And for me, that was the greatest compliment to myself, and then also to my parents and the people that helped build me to who I was, because in my opinion, they had done everything right, and I was in a great spot. And so for the people at Penn who empowered me to be myself, forever grateful, and feel like I'm now can pay it back right now, being back at the university, coaching at my alma mater, loving the kids on my team, and just loving being part of the school.
Yeah.
In that way.
That's incredible. There's so much to go through there. That was such a great answer. And I just kind of walking it back, I would totally, add on to your point about Penn. I've been so impressed by the school, and I'm glad to hear that was your experience as an undergrad, that they're looking for well-rounded candidates. Like obviously it's an Ivy, they're looking for super intelligent people, but they're looking for well-rounded people who can contribute to the school overall. And that's certainly been the case in my experience. And then also looking, kind of at the character and the ethic that your parents instilled in you and how you're bringing that to bear as a coach. I certainly want to talk about that quite a bit later, because I love the idea of the coach as a somewhat paternal figure, and how if you're able to channel that, you're able to get so much out of your players, because there's this, reciprocal respect and admiration and love there. But I do want to hop back on your beginnings at squash, because I think a lot of folks who are listening to this, there will certainly be a ton of people listening to this who understand the game and know the game a bit, but I think there are some unique aspects of it, especially as a young person, that make it pretty challenging. It's a very cerebral game. It's you're it's not the octagon, it's not
Totally.
typically, it's not contact ideally, but it certainly is a one-on-one, nobody can bail you out, very intense sport. So can you kind of talk about what it was like, some of the challenges of growing up in the game, and some of the mental strength that you had to cultivate?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the reason, and I just said, if I were to rank the three sports, soccer, baseball, and squash in the order of what I like the most, squash would have been the least, because I think it was an individual sport. And for me, that was the hardest, to go from being around my friends on the soccer team and having those team wins. And I was more of the distributor in soccer. I was central midfielder, wanting to spray the ball around, wanting to get people involved. And then to go into our octagon, in a way where there's no one helping you out. And if you have a bad day, it's all on you. Um, you can go through rough patches, and the only person that you have to dig yourself out of that hole is yourself. So you can't have a bad day and have a teammate, win for you, or, on the soccer team, if you're not passing well, you can just work. Your work rate can be really high and try to figure out something else that you can do to help the team. But in squash, if you have a bad day, And I would say that I was a really raw squash player. I was I didn't want to take. I was successful at an early age, and one thing that I wish that I changed when I was younger was that mindset of, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it was along the lines of, I'm winning these matches, I'm winning these tournaments, I'm having the success, but I didn't have the growth mindset that I have now as a coach and that I had as a professional player. Because, and this is the problem I feel like in youth sports today, that when you have success at an early age, are you old enough and mature enough to understand that there's a lot of growth that needs to continue to happen? And I always kind of wonder, would I have been better had I just focused on squash? And if I was able to, in a mature way, understand, wow, I need to go put myself in a different environment where I'm not the best and I need to be the worst so that I'm getting my butt kicked and learning on a daily basis. And that's something I wish maybe I got to experience. It's hindsight's 2020. I'm older. This is 25 to 27 years ago that we're talking about here. But I think the travel toughened me up. The car rides with my parents, they were super supportive, but they were real with me. And that's something that I'll always remember, even when I didn't want to hear it, even when I wanted the TLC. And I think as an individual athlete, that's the toughest thing. You see the tennis players are in the limelight a ton, and you see those breakdowns, you see them smashing rackets, you see it's because of the individual stress of the sport. It's because of how mentally draining the travel is, and being in a new city and being in a new hotel and having to get yourself up to play again. In a team sport, there's people that are pushing you and getting you up. And that's what I love about college squash. Team squash was where I always prospered. Like whether it was playing for Penn or playing for Team USA or any team event with squash. And that's why I like coaching it as a team, is because I'm just more of a team guy. But the individualness was always really hard for me as a kid. And I almost played soccer at Penn. I really wanted to play soccer. And I knew that if I walked on to the soccer team, I probably would have quit squash, and that was not the direction I wanted to go. So, but once I got to Penn, played on a team in high school. That was a fantastic squash team. We won, at the time, what was considered 2 national championships, or we were the best team in the country, which was cool. But then I got to Penn, I met all my best friends, and you're playing for each other, and you're playing for something bigger than yourself, which was always great.
Yeah, that is so important. And I think that was something I didn't think about really, is that when you're going up in the squash circuit as a young person, you're representing yourself at a lot of these tournaments. And so that aspect of the game where it's all the intensity, all of the, mental requirements of the game itself, and then you don't have the team to lean on, I would imagine that would be incredibly challenging. And when you step onto the team, even though you're not playing at the same time, training with those guys, growing with those guys, obviously builds a lot of the same team aspects of any other sport, which is absolutely huge.
Yeah, the goal was always to win the national championship in terms of the individual stuff in your age group. I was fortunate to win a couple of those, but I always wanted to play for Team USA. I never played for Team USA as a junior player, which was something that was always aspiring to do. My mom representing the national team, the playing for your country was everything in our house. Everything, like wearing the red, white, and blue. Like all I wanted to do was wear USA on my shirt. I actually wore in soccer, which is crazy. My mom had this USA lacrosse training top that had her number 6 on it, and I was number 6 in high school in soccer. I picked that number because of her, and I used to wear that shirt underneath my shirt. And I actually legit could not play if that wasn't on underneath my high school soccer jersey. I couldn't wear it when I played squash. Two shirts was a lot. But yeah, that's the goal was always to play for the team, like to be higher. I never thought in high school that I'd play professional squash. Never, not once.
Yeah.
That was never really in the cards. It was always, okay, I'm going to play squash to try to win junior national championships, then to get recruited to college, and then to play on the U.S. national team as a junior, right? In that order, and never thought about the pro stuff.
That's incredible. And so it's so awesome because as we're talking through this, I appreciate your humility in talking about your skills and all those things. But obviously, even in high school, you demonstrated an elite capacity on the squash court, and then that only grew as you entered college and continued to grow as a player, and then ultimately playing at the professional level, representing the U.S. national team. So, can you talk about, there's a difference between playing a game that you love, playing a sport, and then becoming one of the best at it. Can you talk about some of the things that helped you develop into one of the elite talents?
Yeah, I always say that I was an athlete that played squash and I was never a squash player until I was probably 22 years old, which is when I was 22 was my first year on tour. So I had the athletic ability. Probably my greatest strength was my retrieving ability, my movement, my first step, my athleticism, which then led to me to being a good volleyer. And in juniors, I used to take the ball in short a lot, and then I had to reconstruct my game in order to have a more basic, more mature game. And it's funny, I went from taking the ball in short a lot to then only hitting the back in college and being more of this grinder kind of type. And my teammates would always joke to me that I couldn't hit a drop shot, that I was like, all I could do was hack it to the back. And I mean, I actually took it as a compliment. I meant I was fit and willing to grind. But I really had to develop my understanding of squash, right? And I think I played as an athlete on there, and that was something that was not going to allow me success in the future. And it's something that I had to come to grips to of I need to go somewhere and be around people that are going to teach the game and how I can adapt my strengths, and also work on my weaknesses to the professional level. And so that understanding really came after my sophomore year. I spent a summer in England. I went and worked with a coach in Surrey, which is suburb of London, and former professional player. Spent a lot of time on really the X's and O's. You would say, like, you're almost going back to the drawing board in a way, and understanding, okay, what do I do well? How can I improve? What are my opponents doing, and how do I adjust? And I saw like a big jump after that summer. And my coach at Penn was like, wow, you came back a completely different person. And then I graduated in '07. And then in January of '08, I moved to Holland, and in Holland from '08 to 2010, and just surrounded myself with an amazing coaching staff who they were very successful in their professional careers, and then also around pros who were aspiring to be, some in the top 100, some in the top 50, and some that were already in the top 15 in the world. And I just tried to soak up as much as I could. And my thinking is just surround yourself with the best always. So my thinking today, don't be the smartest person in the room. Be the hard work, be the most hardworking if you can. But if there's someone who's outworking you, great, because then you have somebody to push, against, which is, and I love competition, but when you're striving for greatness and you're striving to be the best, you need people around you that have the same mindset. And yeah, that's how I kind of dealt with it. And the old school motto, just work. I mean, you have a naval background. One of the things that I loved about, I'm sure they preach at the academy is you got to get your hands dirty, and you got to do the work. And Penn's got that blue collar mentality. That's how I was brought up as well. And so just get after it and put the hours in.
Yeah, there's two things there that are so awesome and really stand out, and it's, you know, and just walking it back. Like, obviously, you had an athletic ability that was innate to you as a player, which was a huge, benefit to you as a player, but that can only get you so far. So really honing your craft, doing the research, and like not just doing the work in terms of the fitness aspect, but also, identifying the people who are going to help you grow, surrounding yourself with people who are going to make you better, and then really focusing on growing and understanding your craft so that you can be, as the highest level of a cerebral player and understanding of the game, which I think applies to all disciplines. And then the other thing that you touched on that I think is so important is, yeah, just that motor of like, are you gonna like, there's X amount of work required, and if you do that work, you're gonna be in a good position. And one of the things that I remember about the coach at the Naval Academy, his opinion was that like he could accept, getting beaten by skill, or maybe some guy just had more experience on the court, but he was never going to allow the Naval Academy to be gassed by another team's conditioning. And so I think that that is, obviously a great way to train a team and identify areas that you can control and those which you can't. But I think it's also a testament. It's if you look up, I obviously did not get a chance to watch you play, but doing doing some research and reading about it, your motor was something that really helped separate you as a player, and really that level of commitment to fitness and making sure that you were never going to be tired at the end of a match, I think is critical. And it's really, it's like, how hard are you willing to work?
Yeah, I think the motor is the biggest thing for me. It's, are you willing to do everything in your power? Are you will you leave, every stone unturned, right? Let's make sure that we're doing everything to get the most out of what we have. And let me tell you, going on the pro tour was extremely humbling. I got my butt kicked right away, and I was just told myself, well, you need to work because you want this feeling. Like you're not traveling all over the world, to make no money to lose. So get it in gear, surround yourself with the right people, and go after it. And anytime I was down, my parents would say tough love in terms of, well, this is, what you wanted to do. And they were right. They you got to work for it. You got to be tough on there. You got to have thick skin. You have to learn from your losses. This is adversity, and you got to bounce back from adversity. Because in reality, I didn't really have any adversity in my life. Went from top 2 in juniors to playing 1 at Penn right away as a freshman. And then, you go right into this pro world. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm the best or one of the best in college, or, top 6 my senior year. And then you go into this world tour where everyone's really good and every match is a final. So you build thick skin. You had to build your calluses, as I say. And, it was something that really taught me a lot about life and how I live my life today.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it really kind of sparks this idea as you played at those 3 distinct levels, top level juniors, top level college, and then ultimately getting on the tour. Were there, besides what we've kind of already covered, were there any matches that really stood out to you as having to, made a big impact on your mindset?
Yeah, totally. There's two situations where I think describes how tough the tour is. So in 2010, I was knocking on the door of top 50 in the world, or I was top 50 in the world, and I was off to this big tour in Asia. So it was a 6-week trip with 3 tournaments. The first tournament was in Malaysia. The second tournament was in Australia, and then the third tournament was in Hong Kong. And I was starting to get into these big tournaments with the big boys. And back in the day, you had qualifying, and I was seeded to qualify in all 3 events. And had I qualified in all 3 events, I probably would have gotten to top 35. And when I think about it now, if I qualify in all 3 of those events, I probably don't retire when I do, which is wild because of my ranking and the trajectory of what happened. So I go on these 3, I spent $6,000 on flights, and I don't qualify for any of the tournaments, all 3. And I think I made, I think in prize money, Bubba, I made 1,000. So on flights alone, I was out of pocket $5,000. It wasn't like I was making any money anyway. And I played 4 matches in 6 weeks, 4. So, and 6 weeks of like a big chunk of summer training that could have been really good for me long time. And it was something that really messed me up because I was on this trajectory and it was kind of my first road bump. And right after that, I moved back to Philly to kind of have a little bit more of a, to feel settled, to be near my family and everything along those lines. And that was the first time where adversity really hit and I felt like I didn't handle it the right way. And looking back on it now, I would have gone back to Holland, reset, trained harder, learned from it. Because a couple years later, I'm playing for the US and I'm like semi-retired in 2013, knew how to handle everything, trained well, and then all of a sudden had my best result playing for Team America in France at the Worlds when I wasn't even playing. So it just showed me that you need to take every situation like it's maybe your last. You need to own it. You need to step in and try to utilize or try to really take full advantage of every opportunity that you have. And if it doesn't go your way, totally fine, but it's not the time to panic. It's not the time to kind of throw in the towel. You can reset and then go back at it. Yeah. So the second experience was preparing completely differently for the men's or the team championships, the world teams. So I played for the US team in France. I think it was in 2013, and I was partially retired. And I had a better mindset going into the event. I knew how to prepare myself. It wasn't an all or nothing. I had no expectations. I was living in the moment and, had the best week probably of my professional career at a time and stage when no one thought I would have played well. And so you have to take those moments, each moment is an opportunity. And that's what we say to the team. Each match is an opportunity to get better. And we don't want to look too far ahead or look back because, for 4 years, that's all these kids get as a group together. So we don't want to waste any moment. And we don't want to have any of the kids at the end of the season look back and say, well, I could have been better there, because we don't want them to waste the time because it goes by quickly. So I use those moments in my coaching all the time because I want my players to not make the same mistakes that I made. And I made a lot of them. It wasn't perfect. It was really hard. And I keep thinking that I'm closer in age to them than I am, because I keep saying, oh, well, when I played, and they're like, coach, that was 20 years ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. But those experiences that I had definitely still shaped the way in which I lead now and try to tell as many of those stories as possible. I mean, I've had great wins that were unexpected, but then it's the moments. I think it's the moments in failure that I've learned the most from. They were really hard at the time, but they're definitely they're the moments that shape me as an individual and as a coach, not the wins. The wins did not shape me as a coach. I think the wins have made me a worse coach. If that, and the reason I say that is because you don't really learn anything from winning. You can then settle if you're winning and you're not growing as an individual or as a person or as a group. So when we, and not to go too far ahead, but when we lost this year in the national semifinals, of course it stinks. Like, it sucks. Like, you want to win, but it's the best thing that's ever happened for our program, because the run that we were on was not sustainable, in my opinion, or going to make us long-term successful. Like, we needed to have a loss like this to make us more successful in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, insofar as sports can be instructive for life, of
Totally.
course, it's awesome to just dominate all 4 years, but it's maybe a positive for the young guys on the team to see, how to go through the process of recovering after a major loss, which some of the guys would not have experienced in their college careers, like the juniors, right? They all they knew was winning the national championship.
Totally. And it doesn't help them prepare for life and what life is, because in college, you're supposed to have these experiences that are going to set you up to be successful post. And in any job, you can't be perfect. You're going to fail. You need to get back up. You're going to get knocked down. And when you get knocked down, you need to get back up and you need to do it again. And you need to kind of fight and fight and fight. And I'm very proud of the last two teams, obviously. I'm proud of the people that laid the foundation before. BG Lemon from business school,
Yeah.
but You know, he was
Yeah.
he was on teams that we were preaching just be fit and be tough and be gritty, and they laid the foundation. And then we continued to get, more highly recruited players. Not a knock on him. I can say that jokingly because he'll laugh. But we started to get, world class talent into the program, but it's people like himself who built the foundation, where other people got to see the success, and now we get to rebuild a new story, and I'm really excited for that new story.
Absolutely. Quick shout out to BG Lemon and the Philadelphia Lightning. If you're interested in some high quality
NSL.
electric squash, they're pretty fun to watch. So definitely give that a check. So this is so great because it's like basically the perfect segue because we talked about the impact your parents had on you. We talked about how that came through in your playing and then also how you carried that into coaching. So I'd love to make that shift to coaching and think about, fundamentally it's, something that's so important to me and I think a lot of people is the use of sports for the development of character. And so it's so interesting to see at the college level, especially the D1 level, there's such an emphasis put on winning and competition, which is of course great. And of course you learn so much about life through that. But also it's so awesome to meet coaches who are thinking about the development of people outside of the game. So when you think about your experience with your parents, your experience playing, and then you step into coaching, what are some of the things that on a foundational or baseline level you're thinking about when you're trying to help these guys grow into competitors and then grow as men as well?
Yeah, for sure. It, there was My mom is tough and naturally just very tough. And I say that not in like she was tough on us, but she would play, she's old school, play with the rolled ankle, the broken finger, just played through everything. And it kind of set the tone for us as when we were younger. I fell off a swing set, broke my collarbone. She was like, "You're fine." so,
Jeez.
I mean, that's an extreme, but that's how we kind of grew up. Now, I don't necessarily say that in my messaging, but I have that toughness kind of instilled in me, and I want to instill that in our players. I want to have them be able to handle adversity on a daily basis and then still succeed. I want them to be able to have the mindset that they have to run through a brick wall, and then on the other side of the brick wall there's another one, because there's another layer of kind of toughness that they have to break through. Right? So we're trying to build strong mindset, a strong mentality, and with that becomes a self-belief that they can do great and impossible and hard things. Because when we were pushing the program, up the ranks, we didn't have the most talented, but you needed to believe in yourself that you are just as good as the best team in the country. And then teams started to feel, wow, those guys play with passion. They're playing with integrity too. Integrity is another thing as well. Playing the right way, doing the right thing, you know, being respectful, having the respect of your opponents, all of those components. So you have to have that toughness, but also the level of respect, right? The integrity. You're representing Penn. You're representing people that came before you. You're representing something that's bigger than yourself. Those were all the values that I was taught, right? The name on the front is more important than the name on the back, right? Always. So when we were building it up, to go back to that thought, we had to match people with belief. We had to match people with energy. We had to match people with passion. And then as we started to recruit players that matched their skill, we had to keep that passion. We had to keep that hunger. We had to keep that fight. We had to have no ego, right? And we had to there's a borderline in terms of individual athletes for me, from arrogance and confidence. So Novak Djokovic, a lot of people think, is very, very arrogant. I think he's actually incredibly confident. And so the reason that he's successful is because of that confidence that he has in himself. Oh, not to mention he's incredibly talented. So that's what we were trying. That's, I think, what my parents really instilled in me, was a confidence level of knowing that I could play with anyone and not to back down of anyone. And I don't want our guys to ever back down from anyone. And I think that people who see us when we walk into facilities know we have a bravado about us. It's not an arrogance, it's a confidence, and it's a belief in what we do. And it's a relentlessness of work that we want to put in and show. And it's allowed us to be successful. And I think the other thing is because I came from such a tight-knit family, it was all about family for me. And it's bringing great student athletes together from all over the world, knocking down barriers and making sure that they're brothers. And for me, we are, in my opinion, the tightest group in college squash, and it helps us win matches because the guy wants to play for the guy that's on his right, and it's on his left, that's in front of him and behind him. And it's really important that they show up on that day to play for one another and play for the team as a whole.
Yeah. Wow, that is so incredible. And I mean, it's basically like a cookbook recipe for team building. I mean, you talk about there's so many things you covered. Integrity, making sure guys are doing things the right way, making sure that your work ethic is unmatched or, at the highest level possible. And then that level of belief that I kind of want to latch onto for a second. There's something so special about the power of belief within teams. I was fortunate enough to serve at what was the best V-22 squadron in the Marine Corps, and no one can show me anything that makes me think any differently. And of course, there were times when we were literally the number one in the country, or we won all the awards or had the best deployments or whatever. But then there were times when we weren't. But on a given day, everybody at that squadron believed that we were the best. And it wasn't, just like you said, it was not an arrogance. It was a confidence. It was this level of belief that when we had new guys join and they learned that we were the best from the senior guys, and then they started to believe it. And then all of a sudden you're on this engine that just continues. And by believing that you're the best, or by believing that you guys are capable of anything, it starts to happen because the power of belief is so strong, especially in teams across all disciplines.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but I actually interviewed for the Navy squash job after Coach Dawson retired. And
Oh man.
the reason I interviewed for that job was everything that you just spoke about, because the academy recruits future leaders, men and women who have strength, they have the motor, they have a mindset of building something that is greater than themselves. So when you get asked to coach future leaders, that's the most inspirational thing that you can do, in my opinion. And it was something that draws me towards the services, because people are selfless, but they are strong-willed and they are strong leaders. And so taking that mindset and approach, obviously we're not doing 6 a.m. the 6 a.m. workouts daily and the grind that you guys are on and the 7 classes, but taking that approach of that business-like approach to get better. How can you support one another on a daily basis? How do you continue the legacy of being great? And one thing that we focus on is legacy, because you need to make a place better than it was when you came in. Leave it better than when you entered. Make sure that you're doing right by the people that laid the foundation for your success. I always say it's unfair for me to be in the position that I am, because certain players are going to play and maybe not get the success that they deserve while they're at Penn. But unfortunately, I get to reap the success because I'm continuously back the next year and the next year and the next year, whereas these guys only get 4 years. So it's really unfair for me to be in that position, because they're the ones laying the foundation and the work. In our first national championship, there's 4 or 5 classes of guys that should have gotten rings for the work that they did for those guys to have that success. So it takes a village. It takes a lot of people that want to do something that's greater than themselves. And going back to your point, we recruited players that wanted to be the first to do something. We wanted players that didn't want to be another name at Harvard and just wanted to have a ring because they wanted a ring. We wanted guys that were okay to fail, but wanted to be the first. And that's how we built it. And we got guys that were just transformational, guys that were just strong-willed and motivated, and they laid the foundation. And the best teams in college are player-led teams. My job as a leader, and I messed up on this a couple times, and I'm sure we'll get into leadership, but my leadership method has changed. And I for sure feel that the best college teams are player-led teams, because those are your brothers or sisters, and you have to be accountable to one another. And they're going to be the people that hold your standards up 24/7.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. And I love what you said. We're going to talk about leadership. Coach, we've been talking about leadership this whole time. It's so great. Like everything you've been sharing about your upbringing, about your coaching style, about the players. This is the beauty of getting to chat with leaders like yourself, that all these things are applicable across the whole spectrum. So you definitely touched on something, and I want to be mindful of time here, but it is super interesting. Like, when you go to recruit guys, you definitely, that was something I wanted to ask about, but you're looking at young people before they even get to college, and you're solving for these intangibles that are so important. And I've seen, growing up, I did not play squash in high school, but I was around it. I saw a lot of the guys who played, and I had never seen guys lose their minds in any other sport in the same way that some of these guys lost it on the court, because it's so intense. It's just you can't hide. It's so tough on these young guys. So when you're looking to bring people onto your team, when you're looking for these traits of, kind of wanting to have the bravado, wanting to do the work, how are you solving for that when you're looking at these high school players?
Yeah, you're going to have a combination of different personalities. I think you always need an alpha. You need an alpha that's going to come in and play one, that's going to be the person, the man. They want that pressure. They can deal with that pressure. And they want to be the person that is the one or two. Then you're going to have, and in every class, I'm always trying to recruit the future captain. So in each class, I want to know that by junior or senior year, that person's going to be my captain. Like, that's the responsibility I'm putting on them, even at a young age. That means that, how do they handle adversity? What's their upbringing like? What kind of leadership styles do they exhibit, in their daily walks of life? Obviously, we're looking for success on the court, right? But does the person use I? Does the person use we? What's the hardest thing that they've ever been through? Because most of these players that we're recruiting haven't lost much. I think their win rate is probably over 90%, right? So who can lose on a Saturday against a Harvard, right? But then has to play Princeton on Sunday and can come back and win that match. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who isn't afraid to work really hard on a Monday and do it again on a Tuesday and do it again on a Wednesday, and really loves that. We're looking for people that aren't finished products. We want them to, if they want to go play pro, amazing. But if they don't want to play pro, that's fine. But are they willing to be the best at what they do on a daily basis? And are they a good human? The last thing, and I always say this now, I have 3 young kids. I want people on our team that I can leave my 3 children with, and I know they're still going to be a good person. So those are the traits that we're looking for. And the last, and when they're on visits, do they fit in culturally to what we do at Penn? And by that, I mean, are they going to come in and I still want them to be themselves. I want them to be the young men that their parents raised. I do not want them to change their cultural values, their views on life. But I want them to be able to come in and know that they can have an open discussion with their brothers, full well knowing that these are the people that are going to support them in their best and the worst of times. Can they fit into that group? And if they can, we're going to be extremely successful. So my biggest thing is creating a culture of players that keep each other accountable, but love each other at the same time, and can tell the hard truth without any repercussion. Because the hard truth coming from your brother is going to be the best piece of advice that you can get, and it's going to be the realest piece of advice you're going to get.
Absolutely. And coach, there's only like one comment that comes to my mind on this is like, if ever you decide you don't want to win any more national championships, you'd make a great human resources officer at one of these top firms for executive placement, because it sounds like you're looking for all the right things, and certainly it sounds like those are all great aspects of players you would want to bring in to help build a strong culture at a program.
Yeah, I don't want to transition too quickly to leadership. I know we don't have that much time, but I think the leadership model is very important. And there's 8 different styles, real quick, of leadership. There's autocratic, democratic, transformational, transactional. Okay, the laissez-faire, servant. All right, 2 more: situational and charismatic. Okay, so that's 8 different type of leadership styles that you can go through. And I think any leader of any organization, you can't just be one, because as your group continues to change, you need to understand which style works for that group. So my first year as a head coach at Penn was 2016. It was my worst year of leadership by far, because I coached everyone on that team exactly how I wanted to be coached, because I was so excited to be the head coach at my alma mater and I wanted to win so bad. So some years you're going to need to be the autocrat. You're going to need to be that person that makes the decisions. That, you know what, you have a young team, they're not experienced, make the decisions for them, lead, right? There's going to be years where you're training these leaders. Okay, let's make it a little bit more democratic. Let's ask for opinions. And specifically in this day and age with this generation, everybody wants to make an opinion, right? Everybody wants to feel wanted, right? Everybody. And so the one type of leadership style that you got to be careful with is transactional, because in this day and age, you do not want to make that relationship with a young kid transactional. This is not a transaction. This is experience. And I think where college sports are going, it is very transactional. But where we are, I think we are in like a transformational kind of realm where we're not in the NIL space. Most of our players aren't looking to go pro, right? So you're trying to have that transformational experience with your players. The way you love the academy, I want the same players to love Penn the way I did, right? And then once you build it, you actually go, I wouldn't call it laissez-faire, but if the players are running themselves in a positive way, then you get to take a step back. And it's the greatest, but can be also the most dangerous place to be in for a leader. Because when you know you're heading in the right direction and the players take over, amazing. Just keep it going. However, if there's one little bad thing that happens and you don't know what's going on, then you could go into the wrong way. So these are all the things that, I focus on, and try to have the best relationship with the players, allow them to have a voice, allow them to have, if this is a company, they have equity in the company. So the equity is really big. They need to feel like they have ownership in what they're doing, because the transactional does not work, in my opinion.
Absolutely. No, and yeah, that's such a great use of those 8 archetypes. And I appreciate your dropping that on us. I think what's so great about that is kind of what you're really describing is the arc of a team, the arc of a leadership style, wherein, over time, at the beginning or at different times on a journey, right? Like you have to take that more invasive leadership approach, or a little bit, you have to exert yourself or assert yourself a little bit more. But then, like you said earlier, which I think is such a great point, the best teams are teammate led, right? Or player led. And so the success, I think, of a great coach, and what I would imagine almost especially in squash, would be to set conditions for you to be able to step back. And when you have that brotherhood, that group of guys, all who understand your principles, who understand your vision, and who bought into it, who have equity in the vision, now they're able to run with it. And you're able to step back and look at the small course corrections that you might need throughout a tournament or day over day. But I think that's such an awesome breakdown of your approach.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool to hear the feedback after the season. After winning 2 national championships, I definitely went more laissez-faire, because obviously we were doing the right thing. But then the players have come to me this year and saying they want more autocratic. They want me to be more on it in terms of what we're doing, more regimented, right? And I think that that is healthy. I think it's a really great I think it's great feedback in that they're willing to have that change. This is what we need. This is what we want. So it's democratic in a way, right? But they're letting me know the style which is going to be most effective for them. And thus, I need to change. So I need to be the one that's the most flexible in all of it. We still have our culture, we still have our standards, we still have our structure. But my message and the way in which I deliver it needs to be catered to each season and each group.
I think it's also kind of demonstrative of a healthy culture wherein you actually have that feedback with your players. Like oftentimes there are coaches who, of course, they ask for feedback and guys may give it or may not, but that you're actually taking it in, processing it, and looking at how you can actually implement it, I think is huge. And that's again, that's going to be one of those reciprocal actions. The players know that they were heard, they see the results of their voice, and now they're more motivated because they're actually being validated.
Yeah, no, I don't think any leader should not be willing to put in the work that they're asking their group to do.
Yeah, and that's so awesome to hear you say, because it certainly aligns with everything I was taught, both at the Naval Academy and in the Marine Corps about, you're not gonna the whole leaders eat last mentality, right? Like you're not gonna do anything, you're not gonna ask them to do things you wouldn't do yourself, and when there's an opportunity for you to get in there and get involved, as long as it doesn't detract from your ability to maintain your positive role as a leader, then you absolutely have to get in there and do it as well. So yeah, that's great. One thing I'm really interested in, and we've touched on it a little bit, but you've got a team. We talked about building a team within an individual sport. But what is really interesting is at these tournaments or at these multi-day events or even just a normal match. So if you've got 9, right, and throughout the day, these guys are playing, and then everything starts to mount for the number 1 seed game. How do you coach? Like we talked about all the actions as a coach building up to this moment. But when your guys are playing, whether it's the 9-on-9 or whatever, and they're in the arena, how are you coaching them? What are you doing to help them get where they need to be? And then throughout the day, as that ratchets up, because these matches are so close, how do you interact with your players?
It's changed over time. I wanted to control everything when I was younger, on a daily basis. I wanted to make sure, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? What are you doing? Why aren't you hitting? Or why aren't you doing your process? To day before a match, it's on them. So the practice that we have the day before, they do whatever they need to do to get mentally and physically ready to get in the best position possible. It's different because we're not a basketball team where we need to run through plays or people need to know what position they need to be in. In an individual match, they need to be settled. They need to be mentally in a good spot. So whatever, and that's different for everyone. For you, Bubba, it might be listening to hardcore rap music or some pump up. For me, it was listening to instrumental with no lyrics to calm me down because I was so revved up. So it's impossible to have one message for the entire team. I think the message that we have is more charismatic at the start. Hey, we're going to do this and this is our style. But then for each person, it is what's your game plan, stick to your game plan. And then on the day of the match, it's more servant leadership. What can I do for you? What do you need? Do you need to be left alone? Okay, I won't even say anything. Do you need a pump up? Sure. Anything that they need in order to put themselves in the best spot individually is what we do. Certain players want certain coaches. They want their teammates to coach them. That's completely fine. There's no ego for me. I step in when needed, and we stick to the plan that we've planned out during the week on match day, so that there's no surprises. And I've learned to be more individualistic on that approach and more lax on that prep because preparation looks different for everyone. So we just need to put them in the right position to be successful, and that's what we do.
Yeah, that's incredible. Because I mean, I think especially for folks who don't have a background in squash, it is so interesting to think about a sport like football, which obviously there's so many great coaches, so much to learn from, but they are super involved throughout the game, and they're making play calls. They're reading the defense, assisting the quarterback, making those reads, and then calling the appropriate plays. But in squash, you're as the coach when they're in there, it's just them. It's two people, a battle of wills, and all the preparation beforehand that sets them up for success. One follow-on question I'll have there are there and I would imagine this when you were younger, kind of per what you were saying, this might have applied a little bit more. But is there ever a time when you do notice certain tactical or strategic decisions that players are making where you might give them a course correction? And then when you do that, how do you balance, when they come out for their between games, they're in the zone?
We're always doing that anyway, but we talk to the players beforehand on how they would like to be communicated
Okay,
to.
okay.
So what's the communication strategy? You have 2 minutes in between each game. You need to be effective. So certain players need to come off. They need to take 15 to 20 seconds just to calm themselves down, and then they'll be able to take in information. Certain people want one thing and one thing only. Certain people want to be yelled at. So it's understanding your players. It's understanding how they take in information, who they take information from. And obviously on our team, we're very international. In what language?
Oh,
So
wow,
that's
yeah.
another thing,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
but these are all prep. This is all conversation that we have way before these matches take place so that we're ready. It's like preparing for a test. We want to say the right things. We want to make sure that the feedback that's being given is taken in appropriately and then used in the right way so that it can be the most effective.
Yeah, and that sparks this question that I can't believe I didn't ask before, but as Bill, you talked you made such a great display of how you build the team and what you're solving for. But there is this extra aspect of it where you do have an international program with guys coming in from all over the world. How do you blend as you build your team? How do you blend those cultures, and how do you what are the challenges associated with like getting everybody on the same page when people are from
Yeah,
places where they don't even speak the same language?
it's very simple. We have them speak to each other. We have them learn about each other. We have them embrace each other. We have them embrace each other's differences. We learn about their differences. We open up. And I think that's been one of the most important things is being very accepting of our differences. I believe that you can only be the best by surrounding yourself with the best. So if we're taking the best from Egypt and we're taking the best from the West Coast of the US and the best from the UK, well, we're bringing the best qualities of people together. And so those players are able to learn from each other. They're able to learn different styles. They're able to learn different methods. And then for me as a coach, I'm learning different qualities that I can then teach other players. I'm learning different ways of thinking. I am learning different ways of coming to a conclusion. My players are teaching me just as much as I'm teaching them. And embracing the differences and really bringing them together to make a really strong unit has made us better. I love every player that I was playing on my team when I was playing at Penn, but we were all from the same background. We were all from private schools in the Northeast. And, this team that I have now is not that. And it is, I think it's the most beautiful thing in the entire world. It's something that's made my coaching career in terms of just the experiences that I've had, whether it's the food, whether it's the daily occurrences. But it shapes all of us. It shaped our success. It shaped everything. So is it always super smooth? No, but neither is life. And that's something that we're learning all of those things on the go, and it's making us stronger as a team, but it's making us better individuals because of it.
Absolutely. And I mean, to your point, right? Like if we're talking about sport equals life, what a great lesson to learn. And I love the thing I'll point out about this is like, yes, it absolutely would be more challenging to build a team from people from completely different parts of the world. But when you're able to do that difficulty can kind of become a superpower. And if you're able to tap into those different perspectives and those different abilities and the way that, I mean, even just those countries you named, right? Like how they see squash itself, how they see different problems, how they attack things, it comes from a different place. And so now you're seeing, I always think about this, like, if a problem is like a prism or a ball or something, and you're able to get a team that comes from different backgrounds and has different views or different perspectives, now you can see the whole picture. And so building that, tapping into that is so incredible. And it sounds like you're doing a great job just from a squash perspective, but then how that builds into the growth of these guys as men. So this was an incredible conversation. We covered so much, and I'm sure, I mean, man, we could do a whole follow-on conversation about recruiting, because I didn't think we would talk about that, and that was infinitely fascinating. The last thing I'll ask you is, I asked this to everybody. If there were one trait that you would recommend to a young aspiring leader to cultivate, what would it be?
Responding to adversity calmly and confidently. I think that in this day and age, we have so many different things going on. And I would say that I'm definitely a perfectionist. I want to be right. I want to do things to the highest degree all the time, but it's impossible. And, Bubba, you're surrounded by incredible human beings at business school. You're around incredibly smart, driven, successful people at the academy. Most of them haven't failed, but they're going to fail. So how does a leader deal with adversity, and how is that their communication after? Do they break down? Are they calm? I think about it, you're in the Marine Corps. And if you're in a situation of high stress, there's going to be adversity all over the place, right? Can that leader calmly communicate after messing up to his team? Don't worry, we're going to be fine. I know how to fix this. And that's one of the biggest qualities I look for in people these days, is how do they deal with failure? Not how they deal with success, but how do they deal with failure? And that's something that I continue to work on a daily basis, and I think makes a really good leader. And I don't think most people would think of failure as it, but I think it's the adversity and failure and how they respond from that makes them great.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's an absolutely great choice, and just recognizing as well and acknowledging when you failed, I think is a great add-on to that helps people grow. So, Coach, is there anything? I know the season just ended. Is there anything going forward that you guys have going on this spring that you're excited about, or that people should check out?
Oh, well, I'm about to get in the car and drive to practice. We're starting practice this week, so we're building it back up, and building it back up with new leaders and new class. It'll be a new team, new thought process in terms of how we get to where we want to go, and just really thankful to have this conversation. And I'm looking forward to episode 2 on just recruiting, Bubba. I'm there for it. So just let me know when you want to talk recruiting.
Awesome. Yeah, there's no rest for the Quaker squash program. You guys got to get back after it so you can get that national championship back to Penn.
Yeah, we'll work for it.
So, Coach, thank you.
Thanks, Bubba.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was awesome.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Lead with Bubba Scott. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show and leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow along on Instagram at Lead with Bubba and let us know your thoughts on the episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.